This webinar is really a nuts and bolts webinar. What we're looking at is how to manage the accounts using My Students. In the old days, you didn't have to do too much. We did a lot of the account creation. You handed out labels and that was about it. But we've transferred a lot of the control to our customers, namely you. So this is a little bit different. Let's see how it goes here. So of course, most of you know me already. I'm Sheila Bunch. I'm the Director of Education at NCLab. And we're very grateful to the grant funded by the Institute for Museum and Library Service through the Library Services and Technology Act. It's been just amazing to work with you guys. If you aren't familiar with NCLab, it is a self-contained desktop platform where you can learn and use computer programming, modeling, and we're going to be adding a bunch of courses as we go. We're pretty excited about some of the things coming down the pipe. You learn through self-paced, self-graded courses. So whether your users are kids or adults or old adults like myself, they can sit down at a computer and they can work their way through. They can then apply the skills using the apps. So there's no point in learning something unless you create something. We have the app suite for that. And this is what we're going to focus on today, is managing the instructors and end users with the My Students panel. If you'd like to follow along, please do. We will be going fairly quickly just due to the sheer volume of slides. Why do we need to manage NCLab? Well, you're collecting lots of information. Plus, once you get used to using it, you can help your students much more easily. You can see who's stuck. You can view their code. This just gives you a lot of tools to work with. You're going to learn how to organize groups and institutions, and we have some new features that we just launched, so I'll explain those to you. You can assign administrators and teachers. You can enroll new users. You can view and manage the progress of your users. You can share files, export reports. That's nice because you can collect data. And then, of course, you can move and delete users. So that's a management aspect. Why do we need to manage it? Well, every user has an account to access the course, keep track of their own progress, and save and share files. What you can do as an institution is enroll, disenroll, and manage users within the institution. You can manage the administrator and teacher privileges, and you can monitor individual and group progress. Schools and libraries are a little bit different. Schools, of course, have to assign grades, and they're very time constrained. Oftentimes, if you have a computer science teacher or a STEM teacher, excuse me, they have multiple periods worth of kids. And sometimes those kids move from one period to another, so they need some of these tools just to manage the school environment. For the libraries, you have a range of types of groups that you can use. You might have an ongoing club, a coding club. You might have an adult study group. And as we move into certification programs, you may have people coming to the library to study to obtain a certificate that will help them get a job. You can also keep statistics on usage, and I know this is an important aspect of grant funding especially. So you can see who's using it when. And you can assign library aides. It's usually best to have one person that's the lead in the library, but you want to be able to assign aides to help in your user groups. And also you might want to assign aides who are at the checkout counter so that they can give people usernames and passwords to get them going. We'll start with your own account, and I hadn't really thought about this too much when I was writing this webinar, but it came up the other day. It's like, help, I don't remember my username and password. And I thought, you know what? That's something that happens to all of us. So I want to explain a few things about your own account first before we go into managing the groups. One thing that's changed is that we're eliminating All the accounts start with an I or a TA. Those are dependent accounts. And now all instructors, so that's the teachers and administrator teachers, must have a valid email address. You can use your library address. I know in some libraries it's better to use a personal email address. From our end of it, we don't care. That's strictly your own administration that you have to worry about. And you can use both. You can open up your groups from a personal email or the library email. Why do we go to email addresses? Well, number one, that's better accountability. It's a real person. We can shoot you an email, or you can shoot us an email if you have issues. And it's much easier, of course, to communicate. And that's both by email, but also when you're accessing restricted support areas, they have a way of authenticating you. And it's portable. So let's say you're working at the library in Pahrump and you transfer to a library in Las Vegas. It's a very simple matter to transfer your account. And your progress will stay with you. So if you've been working through the courses yourself, you won't lose any of your nice check marks that you've accumulated. All right, so there's a couple ways you can become an admin or a teacher. And one of those is to be included in the initial institution setup. And actually, the form that you see on the screen, actually it came out of trying to set up all the libraries last year. This way, whoever is at the state level can send us the primary contacts. We can put them all in one form and upload them and create your library accounts or update them. Whenever you're enrolled by email, you get a link to set your password, because this way is just using your email to plunk it into the institution. You still need to set your password. The other way you can become an admin or a teacher is you get added by someone else who is an admin or a teacher. So for instance, I'm an admin, I can add you, but also if you have someone at the state level or the lead in your library, they're able to now add any email address as a teacher or an admin teacher. The only thing you have to do at your end is you have to sign up for a free account. This just creates an identity. I'm going to just flip screens here for just a moment because sometimes that's hard to see. Okay, the free account is right at the bottom of any of the pages on our website. If you go down here, you can see sign up. So if I click that, it'll generate this form. If you have a Gmail address, you can sign up with Google. Otherwise, you enter your name, your email address, and create a password. Accept the terms, submit, and now you have a free account that can be used to enroll you as a teacher admin in your library. So that's the personal step that you have to take, and then once you have that account, then you can be added as a teacher. And we'll show you that in a little bit. The other issue is sometimes, I know all of us have a million accounts and you go, oh, I forgot my username, password. Okay, first of all, your default username is based on your email. It's usually just the part in front of the @ sign, but just put in your email address and click on forgot password. You can generate a new one. That's one nice thing about having these email-based accounts. They're under your control as an individual. You don't have to wait for anybody else to set a new password for you. All right, so this is the beast that we're going to be looking at today. This is the My Students panel, and it's very rich. There's a lot going on. So a little initial tour here. At the very top here, you can be an admin in more than one institution. So that's nice. If you are working with other libraries in your area, you could have several in that box. And then within the institution, you can make multiple groups. So this is an example I set up pretending to be a teacher. I have 6 periods of instruction. I have a club called Code Wizards After School, and then I have a training course where I'm training other computer science teachers, and then I can enroll users into any of those groups. The setup button is kind of small. It's up at the top here. It looks like a little lock, and that's where you're going to go to set up your students. And this is where you see the data for the accounts. This is where you select a course that you want to see the data on. And this pink box over in the corner is where you're going to export your reports. You can get to My Students either by clicking on the icon that says My Students, or there's a little menu at the bottom. You can pull it up and click on it there as well. Okay, so we're talking about groups and institutions. What's an institution? Well, typically this is going to be a physical location, you know, the Carson City Library, for example. Online is a little trickier. Some online institutions now have like hundreds of sites, so but it's the same idea. It's a local entity of some kind. You can monitor more than one institution. You just must enroll in each one as an admin teacher. And I've worked with some people in Washoe that have done that. So this is where you find institutions. You just select them from your drop-down menu if you have more than one. Okay, so that's an institution. And what's a group? Well, the groups are listed here on the left-hand side. And at the bottom, you can see some controls here where you can add, remove, or edit a group. And edit, all it is editing the name. And typically, this is a class or a period or a club or a camp within an institution. Now, it used to be that it was one size fits all. If you were going to assign an instructor to an institution, they saw all the groups. Just recently, and I mean a couple of days ago, we made it possible to assign instructors by group. So if you have someone leading, say, this Code Wizards After School, and even some parent volunteers who are coming in, you can enroll them in just Code Wizards After School. And this also might be helpful for libraries that have, you know, really tiny satellite branches where you're not going to have very many people. Rather than making their own institution, you can make them groups within your own library. Makes it easier to manage. All right, so then we're going to assign roles. Well, we have 2. And I always call them teacher admins, but I've noticed when I was building this that officially we call them admin teachers or just teachers. So an admin teacher has a little bit more power within the institution. An admin teacher can create, edit, and remove a group. They can enroll and assign teachers and admin teachers to either groups or to the whole institution. And they can remove users and teachers from the institution. They can also, both admin teachers and teachers can enroll, view, and manage students. A teacher has a little bit less privileges. A teacher can be assigned to specific groups, and a teacher enrolls, views, and manages students in those assigned groups. And a teacher can add other teachers to an assigned group, but not an admin. So it's hierarchical. But again, that's nice. You have someone come along that who is going to assist you, say, with a club. You can assign them to a group, so they can be removed later if you need to. So this is some screenshots showing the procedure. Again, they must be an existing NCLab user. If they don't have an account, they can create one with that free sign up, and then you select the role. So I have this particular email user whose account is King of the Hill, and I've decided to make them an admin and teacher. So that's what I select from this role panel. And now the King of the Hill account can administer the whole institution just like I can. So my screen and their screen are going to look identical. They have the same privileges. So it's a fairly powerful position, but it's not a bad idea to have a couple people in a library that can administer the whole account. For teacher only, instead of selecting admin teacher, we're going to select teacher, and then you can select which groups you want to add them to. So in this case, I have a teacher who's going to take on period 1 intro CS and period 2 intro CS. And then you can see once the account's created, they can only see those 2 groups. Now, they can enroll teachers, but if they popped open that same window that we use to create our admin, they're not going to have the ability to choose an admin. It'll strictly be another teacher. And you can see that this little box at the bottom with the plus minus and the pen, add, delete, and edit is gone. So they cannot eliminate their groups and they can't add groups. That's only something that can be done by an admin. But again, this is nice if you have several people involved in doing clubs or camps or monitoring a certain group. This is a great way to set them up. They still can do everything they need to do with their users, but they're not looking at the whole institution. Another way to add a teacher admin or an admin is to just bump up an existing user. So you can do that by finding them. I have this student, A1 student SCB, and it turns out, and this has happened in libraries, it's like, wow, they did really well, and now they want to lead a group themselves. So you can just click on the I symbol for information, and as long as they're not a dependent account, I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, then you can bump them up from student to teacher or even admin and teacher. Of course, you must be a teacher admin to do that. But this is nice. If you have people come into your library who turn out to be, wow, they just really got into this, and now you can have them lead a group, you can bump them up. One thing to watch out for is if it's a dependent user, and when you click on that I, you will see dependent user. You can't change the status of that account. So they cannot become a teacher or an admin. Libraries use these dependent accounts a lot. They're easy to use, but that's one of the disadvantages. They can't assume a teacher or an admin role. So enrolling new users, and there's 3 ways to do this. We can enroll them by code, we can enroll them manually, and we can generate new accounts. And this little button up here is your friend. It's the setup button. And when you click on it, you'll see this screen. So the first line you'll see here is it'll tell you how many seats you have available. As library accounts, you have no limit as to how many seats you can have. If you find you're using up the seats that we've assigned to your account, just email us, we'll add more. So on this first screen, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to select the option. We'll go through these one at a time. And this one is enroll by code. And the moment you click on enroll by code, it'll explain over here what that does. And it's generating a code for enrollment to a group. And this is something you'll need to give to your users or students. You can also put them into a specific group. And this is one screen where you can create a new group as well. Typically, you put them into an existing group. There's one pool that's called Untitled. If you're not sure where they're going to go, you can just throw them into the Untitled pool to begin with. On the second screen, you can limit the enrollment in your group or just check unlimited. It won't draw down your pool for enroll by code until people use the code. You can set a limit, and this is nice if you do seriously want to restrict a group. Let's say you have a special camp and you can only manage 15 participants, then you can set that 15 in this box. Okay, on the third screen, it's going to give you your code. It's a 5-digit code. It's also going to appear in your My Students panel. You'll see the code over here for whatever group you created it. There's a part 2 to using an enrollment code, and that is that the students or users have to do something at their end. And what they're going to do on their desktop is go to Settings, which is in your lower left corner of the screen. And again, I showed you this earlier. You can pull up all your different functions of the desktop from the bottom menu as well. Once they open Settings, there are 4 tabs, and they'll go to the Student tab, and then they simply put the code that you give them in this box and press OK. And now they are enrolled in your group, and the courses become live. They may have to refresh their desktop with Function F5 on a Windows machine to see the change. Just to go through the other tabs on the user settings, because these are kind of fun, and this is a great thing to have your kids do, especially while they're waiting for everybody to enroll, if you use Enroll by Code. You can, at any time on the basic screen, you can change your username. You can even change your email on this screen. It'll preserve your account and all your account privileges. And here you can select language. So most of the time it'll be in English. We do have support in several languages to some degree or another. The one that we're really working on right now is Spanish. So we're translating all our materials into Spanish. Something fun is that you can set an avatar, and if you click on Change Avatar, you'll see a library of photos, or you can even upload your own image to make a picture. Personal screen. Now, we don't really care about collecting any information from people on this screen, but I know sometimes you're looking for demographics. So if you want, you can have your users enter information here. And one of the requests we had was for age. So at the very bottom, it's possible to enter the birth date. Then on this screen, and this is another fun one, you can change the wallpaper. There are some default wallpapers, or you can upload your own. You can upload an image, customize your desktop, make it a little less boring. Okay, so that's a little bit about the user end of it. And as they enroll, you'll see them pop up in your My Students. So there's my Python Circus, Brother Monty, and his trombone. That's his avatar. So now I'm seeing it in my period 3 group. And if you don't see it, just click on the refresh button. It's real time, so as they enter that code, you'll see your class populate, or your group populate. That's option 1, that's Enroll by Code. Now, that works if they have email addresses, but you don't, and actually the second option is also for use with email addresses. So let's go through the second option. This is a little less complicated. If you have a group going, you just want to add a student or 2 to your group, and if you know their username or their email and they're not in another group, you can use the second option, which is enroll students manually. And again, it's assuming they already have a user account in NCLab. Once again, you select the group you're going to add it to, and then you type in the email address or username. NCLab automatically checks to see if it exists, and you can list multiple users at one time. So your third screen will just simply acknowledge that they're enrolled, and here's my Ralph Coder, username Reckitt, and now he's in the same class as Brother Monty. And again, if they can't see the courses, just have them reload their desktop. And that brings us to option 3. This is the one you're most familiar with. It's preferred by libraries, and it's been in use for the longest time. This generates the anonymous username and passwords. You can create a list, then simply assign one to each user or student. It's a good option for people who don't have email addresses. For example, younger students in your groups won't have emails. Okay, so once you have that selected, then on the second screen, you're going to enter how many accounts you need. In the old days, aka a few months ago, it simply used up every seat and generated this huge list. And it'll still do that unless you set a number here. Like in this case, I have 95 available seats, and unless I change that, it'll generate 95 accounts. You'll also select the type of password that you want. Now you can do the same for all and then have everybody change them when they log in. That's a very simple way to manage it, but not terribly secure. You can have a prefix and a number. It's nice if you're, say, matching it to a list. And then you can just have the computer generate random passwords. The nice thing about it is you can always change the passwords later, so it's not life-threatening if you don't get the right passwords. And it's also not life-threatening if you forget to change this number and suddenly use up all your accounts, because you can go and delete the ones you want to delete later. So on screen 3, it's going to display the list of users. So you'll see I've got test SEB 144 and the password. And you really want to do this: download and save the spreadsheet. It'll give you a list of all the usernames and passwords. And that's nice. You can print it out. You can hand it to your library desk if you are just going to have individual users, and they can just check off the sheet when they hand out a username and a password to someone. And you'll notice on this that all of these users start with test SCB, and that happens to be the prefix for my test school. We set those letters at NCLab when we create your institution. So that's built in. It creates a unique identifier that's not like any other institution. And then it just attaches a number at the end and just keeps building that list. All right, so generating new student accounts, they will show up immediately in your class. And life-saving tip, this is one of my most frequent requests in support. If you or the user loses the password, you can reset it immediately by selecting Reset Password at the bottom of the window, your My Students window, and typing in a new password. It's that simple. So this is your friend here at the bottom of the screen, and I'm sure if you have a large group of people, very often someone will forget a password or you won't be able to find the master list. You can just reset it. All right, so that's the hardest part, is getting everybody enrolled. It's once you've done it a few times, it's not bad, but there are a lot of steps. And like I said, most libraries right now are using that third option, the anonymous generated accounts. So once you have a list, you can just hand over a name, a username and password, and someone can log on with that. They don't need to create a free account to do that. They can just use the information you give them and off they go. Now you can view their progress, and what's really a great feature of NCLab is it's real time. So as they're working away, you'll see this data generate. So this is from a camp we did in January, and I blurred out all the information to make it anonymous. What you'll see are green check marks for every level that's completed. And this little icon here is a quiz. So after 7 levels, they have a quiz and then just a challenge level after that. And then the yellow dot means that the level is open, and red dots mean that the level is locked. It's color-coded right now. This is going to change. We're going to make it a little easier to read. These were just different units in the course, but you can ignore those colors because that's all going to change. And make sure you select the course you want to view. In this case, I've selected 3D modeling. You can select Carol, you can select Python 1 or Python 2, and it'll just show you the data for your participants. And it'll show you their score, it'll show you how they did on the quizzes. And if you have names enabled, it'll show you the name, it'll show you their username, and you still have that information button if you need to pop up anything more. This is the part I really enjoy. You can click on one of these green check marks and say you have someone that's struggling with the level, and it'll pop up this dialog box. And this is very rich in information. So it'll tell you the level. In this case, it was 2.5. It'll tell you how much time they spent on it. In this case, it's 16 minutes. And it'll give the score that they received once they pass the level. It'll show you their code. And not only that, but if you press this view game button, you can play their code so you can see how it works. You can also, if you have someone who wants to start higher up, you can click on any one of these levels and you can unlock the course either specifically on that level or all the way up to that level. Same thing, if you want to lock some sections, you can lock them. And if you have someone who's just, gonna die before they get to the next level, you can always mark it as solved so they can move on. This button is grayed out on this screen because this person has already solved it. So this is what it looks like when you try and change the status. If you want to change it to unlocked, it'll give you an option of making all the previous levels unlocked as well. So you can click that if you want that, or you can just unlock that particular level. Same thing with locked. You have those options. The other way you can do that is on the user's screen. So if you're walking around and someone says, I need to unlock this, you can click on whatever section you want to unlock, and it'll do the same thing. It will prompt you for your authentication because it's not something the user can do themselves. You have to do it for them. Okay, so sharing files. This is something we're building and it should be available pretty soon. If you go to the My Files icon and open it up, now you can save your own files at any time and so can your users. But we also want to start using shared folders. So if they're, say, doing 3D projects or Carol projects, they can save it to that particular folder and then you should be able to open it from your end and vice versa. So this is a way of sharing files, and that's pretty exciting when they're creating models and drawings and games and so forth, to be able to share that. You can share them in the meantime by posting a URL to a document, and we covered that in the last webinar. Okay, so last big item here is exporting reports, and remember that's that little spreadsheet icon in the upper right-hand corner of the window. And once you click on that, it's going to give you lots of options. So first of all, you have to select either the whole group with this top checkbox, or you can select individual students, users. And then you can select what you want in the report. So I've clicked everything here, but you can select which data you want. And once you've selected the data you want, you click Generate Report. And it'll create a save window where you can download it to your desktop. It is a spreadsheet. Default, of course, is Excel, but really you can open it in any spreadsheet software. It'll work just fine. It's a very plain vanilla spreadsheet. And then you can use the data as you would use in any other spreadsheet. You can create graphics out of it. You can export it for teachers, of course. They can export it for grades. You may be exporting some user data or averaging information. So it's very rich in information, and now you have a way of aggregating it outside of NCLab. Finally, one more management item. If you need to move a user to a different group, you just simply click on that user and you drag it up to the other group and let go, and now it's moved into the other group. So again, if you don't know where to put someone, you can always put them in untitled. And let me show you the real desktop because that's a little hard to see. Okay, so there's some of my students, and I'm going to click on a couple of them, and I'm going to scoot them over into Code Wizards After School. And now I've gone from 11 to 14. But again, this untitled group here at the top, if you don't know where to put someone, you can always put them into untitled and then move them into a specific group if they're going to be participating in a camp or club or a study group of some kind. All right, so the last part is removing users. And if they are these generated accounts, and you hear different names used for them, enumerated, aka dependent, aka generated accounts, once they're gone, they're gone. So any progress that's associated with them is also gone. And this is the disadvantage of using enumerated accounts. If someone really wants to keep a record of their progress, they're better off to enroll with an email. All right, and the last big tool, of course, is as teachers and teacher admins, you have the privilege of having all the answers. And you can access that within the course. All courses have this solution icon. You click on it. It'll show you the correct solution in the viewer. And then if you want to run it, click on replace and it'll throw it into the code cell and then you can run the code. So you do have all the answers at your fingertips. You can also get the solution keys on the instructor resources page, and if you're not logged in, it'll prompt you for your ID, again, to verify that you're administrator. And as always, please don't share these any more than you have to. It sort of takes the excitement out of doing a course if you have all the answers as a learner. Although some learners really don't care, but we do want to try and keep those as private as possible. Okay, so that was, believe it or not, we've gone through almost 47 slides. There's a lot of information in here, and I will be posting this slideshow to the community group. So we learned how to organize groups and institutions, how to assign admins and teachers, how to enroll new users 3 ways, how to view and manage progress, how to share files. And again, this is a feature that we're building within the desktop and should be available soon. How to export reports and how to move and delete users. So at this point, I am going to pull up the chat window. Here we go. Okay. Can you change from generated to email after they've started? The answer is no, you cannot. So again, generated are easier to manage. Just make sure you don't delete them. But email is portable and it just stays with them wherever they go. Okay, well, any questions before we go? Where will the link to this video be posted? It'll be on the community page. So again, I encourage you to use this resource. All the webinars go there. And so I will post both the recorded webinar and the slideshow. And you're welcome to share those with your libraries. Okay, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and if you guys are good to go, next time we're going to look at a little bit more at skills related to job training and some of the projects you can do to go along with that. So that's going to be probably geared a little bit more towards your adult market. It should be pretty interesting. Until next time, I'll say goodbye to everybody. If you have support issues, you can always click on that yellow button on the corner of your screen, and you can also email me directly at sheila@nclab.com.